Welcome back, friends. It's Anders. Today we are making the martini. We've had this channel going for about 3 years, nearly 3 years, and we haven't done the martini yet, and that's because I've kind of been avoiding it. There's a lot to unpack. This is a cocktail everybody's familiar with. The history's a mess, recipes have changed over the years, and everybody has their own idea of what the ideal ratios are supposed to be. Even the definition of martini has been soiled over the years. But we're coming back to realizing what the classic martini is, and today we are going to talk about it, make it, we are going to enjoy it, and you are going to be able to make a martini for yourself. So, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button for more sips, tips, and recipes, and let's go make the martini. Finally, to the bar. The martini. Where do we start? It's hard to say because nobody knows where the martini came from. Nobody knows who created this drink. Some people say it was created at the Knickerbocker Hotel in New York City. Others say San Francisco. Some people say Martinez, California. There's a theory that it's named after the Vermouth brand Martini and Rossi. These are just to name a few. There are other stories as well. So we don't know. We have no idea, but it dates back many, many years. We're talking 1800s. It's pretty commonly accepted that you can link the martini all the way back to the Manhattan. They're very similar builds. You have a base spirit, vermouth, and then bitters, which is optional in the martini, and we'll get into that. But one thing we do know is that it changed over the years. Early on, vermouth was crucial in this cocktail. In fact, early recipes were 50-50 split between gin and vermouth. Now, time passed, and people started cutting back on the vermouth, and we got a drier and drier cocktail. Pretty soon, everybody was coming up with their own ideal ratios for the martini. 2-to-1, 4-to-1, gin to vermouth, 7-to-1, 12-to-1, 15-to-1. In fact, Winston Churchill's notorious recipe for a martini was gin and nothing but a glance at an unopened bottle of vermouth from across the room. Then by the 1950s, people were switching out the gin for vodka and having vodka martinis. Before long, people were just drinking cold vodka and calling it a martini. Now, by the end of the 20th century, you start seeing martini lists in restaurants and bars. These were fruity, brightly colored cocktails served in martini glasses. You could argue they weren't actually cocktails either, but cocktail has become a greater umbrella of mixed drinks, and we're not getting into that right now. My point is, they weren't martinis at all. I do think the general public has come back around to embracing the classic martini, and that's what we are focusing on today. Now, before we get started, there are 5 questions one must ask. Vodka or gin, shaken or stirred, wet or dry, up or on the rocks, and olive or twist, or both. I will touch on each of these as we make the drink. So, now the booze. Olive or twist. Okay, for this martini, we're gonna need gin, dry vermouth, orange bitters, olives, or a lemon. For my martini, I'm using gin. Original martini called for gin, and I like the bright botanicals in the cocktail. However, if you want to go with vodka, you will find that it imparts less flavor than gin. So you're gonna taste the other components more, and you'll probably have to adjust accordingly. Now, as for the dry vermouth, I love vermouth. So I'm making what's called a wet martini. It means there's a good amount of vermouth in it. If you were to make a dry martini, it simply means you have less dry vermouth in your cocktail. This is confusing because in other cocktails, dry usually means the opposite of sweet. But here it just refers to the amount of vermouth in the drink. Now, orange bitters. This is optional. It offers a little bit more depth of flavor, but you don't need it. You don't have to run out and get it, but if you do have it, try it with a dash of orange bitters in your cocktail. On to the olives and the lemon. This is for garnish. I am actually doing both. The olives add a little bit of brininess, and I found these really itty bitty little olives, which is perfect because I like my martinis, believe it or not, itty bitty. Martinis are best when they're ice cold, and if you have a small cocktail, it's easy to have a final sip of that drink when it's still cold. I'd rather have a second small martini than a warm big martini. Shaken or stirred? Of course I have to bring up James Bond. Vodka martini, shaken, blah, blah, blah. I'm not gonna say Mr. Bond is wrong. If James Bond came into my bar and asked for a shaken martini, I would serve him a shaken martini. But for me, I like it stirred. It's not that the shaken martini is gonna be bad, it's gonna be very different though. It's gonna be really light in flavor, it's gonna be more diluted, it's gonna be colder, but it's also gonna be very thin because shaking imparts bubbles, and that takes away some of the nuances of both the vermouth and the gin. If you stir it, it's gonna be bigger in flavor, it's gonna be silky in texture. But if you like your martinis shaken, keep shaking them up. Let's build. Now to the point of Upper on the Rocks. This will be served up because I wanna control the dilution, and I've got a glass in the freezer that I put in the freezer yesterday. All right, let's make this. Into the mixing glass, 1.5 ounces of gin. To that, we will add 3/4 of an ounce of the dry vermouth. 1 dash of orange bitters. I'm gonna do 2 because this is a little dasher bottle. Now we can add ice and stir. A good 30 seconds here, maybe even more. It really does depend on your ice. In fact, I usually go over the 30-second mark because my ice is very cold. And I like to look at the ice when it starts to round off the corners, it falls into the drink, and strain off the cocktail into the chill glass. Express some lemon oil across the top. This will keep it bright. And I'm gonna discard this. You could put it on there if you want, but I'm going to instead drop 1 olive into the bottom of the cocktail. I actually like it sitting in there because you get a little bit of the brine from the olive, and it gets a little bit more savory when you get to the bottom of the drink. There we have the martini. Cheers. Look at this beautiful little cocktail. That is lovely. It is light, very clean. It's a strong cocktail. Because it's so light and delicate, it's a pretty drink. I like that it has a touch of savoriness from the vermouth. You've got the brightness from the lemon up front, and the strong botanicals are really good. So if you are gonna use gin, which I would recommend at least trying, pick one that you like. There we are, the martini. We finally addressed it on this channel. I have not even touched on dirty martinis. That's gonna be another time. That'll be fun. And yeah, this is something that I think we'll come back to. If not make it again, we'll certainly reference it again. And I'll put a link so you can watch this video once more. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Check us out on Patreon, grab your merch, go to my website, sign up for the newsletter. Now you've got a lot to do. So I will see you next time. Cheers.